Today on Politically Insane, we are going to talk about Christians drawing the line and making America a Christian nation. Also, the Kyle Rittenhouse trial comes to a close, and we will discuss a little bit more on that as the jury, at the time that I'm recording this, is making their final decisions. And natural immunity over vaccines, which one is really greater? We finally have some data to prove one side or the other. And finally, the FDA asks the court for 55 years to fully release the Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine data. This and much more today on Politically Insane. Before we get into our first topic today, we want to bring to you our sponsor for today's episode, which is Patriot Crew. Patriot Crew is a new sponsor. Patriot Crew has all kinds of patriotic t-shirts, hats, hoodies, and so much more. They are a patriotic brand that wants you to be able to express your patriotism, and what better way to do that than supporting a patriotic company? Go check out their catalog, find something that you like, and I promise it won't be hard. They have comfortable yet durable clothing that really truly does look amazing. If you use code POLITICAL10, that is POLITICAL10, you'll receive 10% off any order. But if you plan to order more than one item, they've given my listeners an amazing opportunity to have 15% off with the code INSANE15. Again, that's INSANE15. Go check them out at patriotcrew.co and make sure to use the code POLITICAL10 for 10% off any order, or INSANE15 for 15% off any order of 2 or more items. So, getting into this topic of drawing the line and making America a Christian nation, we really don't have to make America Christian because it was founded on Christian principles. So this idea of making this nation a Christian nation, it really should already be recognized as a Christian nation. I think that is a pretty popular decision when you think of everyone, and we'll kind of get into that. But when we talk about this, when we talk about making America Christian again, when we try to bring back morality, Christian morality into America, what do we mean? Because I've gotten a lot of slack for this, especially on this show, and just in general in life. I think I've gotten a lot of hate for wanting to propose this, that America ought to be a Christian nation. And from the early colonial settlements, America has been a Christian nation. So I don't understand why this is such an argument. The majority of America from the beginning has had a nominal agreement on being Christian in some manner, in some sense. Even immigrants that come to this country would also have this understanding and agreement that America is a Christian nation. But the question still stands, where do we draw the line? And there is a concern of free exercise of religion. And, I totally understand this because even as a Christian, I have this concern myself. I don't want the government intervening. So if America is a Christian nation, does it affect the freedom of religion that we have? Does it affect our freedom of religious expression? Because that is a concern for all of those who may have some sort of religious beliefs, whether they call themselves Christian or any other religion. That is a concern. So as a Christian, I think we could understand that we wouldn't want the government telling us how to view our Christianity or how to express our Christianity. So the same principle has to still be in line. We can't have the government telling us that we have to be just maybe Muslim, for example, or even going as far as saying that you must be Christian. We don't want that. And I think even Christians can understand that. We don't really want to use the power of government for that. America has really only recently made it politically incorrect to consider itself a Christian nation. I think this is kind of silly because even in my lifetime alone, and again, I'm only 24 years old, so even in my lifetime, I've seen a drastic change in how America sees itself as being a Christian nation. I've seen a drastic change in this becoming politically incorrect. And this hasn't always been the case. I feel like as a kid, I feel like this was something that we were proud to be a Christian nation. We were a nation under God, and we did have Christian morals. America has always been known as a Christian nation since the forefathers shaped the nation's public policy and their law on Christian morality. Christianity has also been a vast majority across the nation until recently. It's just been the way that you if you were to take a poll and ask people what religion they may be, a majority of people would call themselves Christians. Now, I think that we have other religions kind of flooding in, which, again, I don't think that we should have any right to be able to stop them and to stop their freedom of religious expression. But there's been other religions and maybe others who just simply don't believe in Christianity at all. They believe that there should be no religion enforced or no religion really acted upon or use any sort of religion for our morality, and that's what I would fight against. And that's what many on my side would also fight against, that we should use Christianity for morality. So, we think of this and we understand where America was built and how what the foundation of American law and American morality drives from. It is driven from Christianity. Christianity has been the majority across the nation, and we have to understand this. It always has been a Christian nation. The concept of separation of church and state, which we've discussed on this show previously, more in depth, and but this concept of separation of church and state, it protects Christians and churches to have free will of religious expression. This really forces the government from being able to force attendance or even what is taught in the churches across the nation, whatever church it may be. And we don't want to take this away. Even as Christians, we don't want to take this away. This is a misunderstanding of, that Christians are trying to convert the whole nation, to force the nation to be a specific type of religion and driving morality into society. It's this idea that Christians want to take over the world and cause, really kind of force everyone to believe the way that maybe the Christians do, which is silly because even Christians have disagreements. I think there's, I don't know the number anymore. I feel like it's never-ending, kind of a never-ending growth of how many denominations of Christianity there is. But even Christians can't come to a final agreement on what morals to truly stick to, overall, and whenever you get into specifics. But when it comes to overall morality and the morality of society, that is what we're talking about. So though as Christians, we ought to be trying to convert individuals and try to understand Christianity, we ought to never use a power of government or even society to force this upon individuals. So we have to understand that we can't use government or use the society around us to try to force people, because this is taking away free will. And if you've listened to the separation of church and state episode, we talked about how even Thomas Jefferson himself believed that if God gives free will, so should Christians, and so should the government. We should all be wanting free will for anyone to choose what type of religion or what type of maybe Christianity they believe is best for their soul. I think this is something that even God himself wants man to create, or it wants man to decide. I think God himself makes that very clear, that he wants man to decide for himself, to choose to follow him. And so for us to use government or society to force individuals into being Christians, that's not going to save any souls. That's not going to change anyone. So that's not at all what we're fighting for. What we do want to do as Christians, though, is we want to fight to keep this country on the same understanding of what morals are and where they're driven from. For example, political action on issues such as abortion, maybe school prayer, or how our kids ought to be taught in schools, the traditional family, and so many more topics we can go to. All of this political action on these issues is not an establishment of religion. It is an establishment of how these political actions are going to affect those in our society. It is going to force morality, but it is not an establishment of religion. It's not causing someone to follow a specific type of religion or follow even just Christianity in general or any other religion. It is simply acting upon these issues, using our own religion. It is using our religion to fight against these issues. It's not forcing or establishing this religion. Some things I want to make clear is that America is fully capable of taking political positions on moral matters without establishing religion, such as Christianity. America is fully capable of establishing public policies that reflect morality of most Christians without establishing Christianity. And America is fully capable of being a Christian nation without violating the rights of conscience or the free exercise of religion, this freedom of religion that we're trying to protect. All of these things are true. All of these things can be true. So anything less than this is crossing the line. We need to make sure to approach that line. And, of course, like I mentioned, not using government in a way that the government will maybe enforce some kind of religion upon the people, but we enforce Christianity to make our moral decisions. We fight with Christianity to change these moral policies that are being put into place. This is what it comes to. Now let's get into the headlines from this past week. All right, as many of you know that I'm very invested in the Kyle Rittenhouse trial. I'm recording this on Friday, somewhere in the afternoon, so we still do not have the verdict, and so I'm kind of coming at all of this without the verdict in hand, so keep that in mind. But really, I'm not going to talk too much about the verdict. We understand this coverage, and we understand how much it's been covered of this trial. This has been just crazy how much it's been covered, and all of the major news outlets, they're all covering this case very closely, and really for their own reasons, and that's what I want to talk about. Because the closing arguments happened this past week, and they didn't really get covered equally at all. And I noticed this, and I saw this, I thought maybe there was a reason behind it, but it seems very clear that the reason is exactly what I maybe assumed in the first place. But Fox absolutely was not happy with the biased coverage of the closing arguments, just as many of us may have noticed. See, it says in this Fox article, which again, all of my sources will be at politicallyinsane.us. If you click on sources, you can find them all there. But Fox wrote this article, and they were not happy with how this coverage was so biased. It says, however, after hours of coverage dedicated to the prosecutors, both MSNBC as well as CNN opted out of covering the kickoff of the defense team's closing arguments, airing the White House ceremony of President Biden signing the bipartisan infrastructure bill into law. Following some on-air analysis of Biden's legislative achievement, CNN returned to the Rittenhouse case, missing the first hour of the defense's closing argument. Meanwhile, MSNBC returned to its normally scheduled programming with the Deadline White House host Nicole Wallace hyping Trump ally Steve Bannon's surrender to authorities after he was indicted for defying a congressional subpoena. So we see all of this, and we see that they cut this off. So what it was is that the prosecution was able to make their claim, and just conveniently, that happened to be the time that they can go over and watch Biden sign this bill, this infrastructure bill, and signing it into law. Conveniently, as soon as the prosecution is done. And conveniently, right as the defense is coming up to make their case. Do I think this was just, a matter of maybe convenience, or just a matter of, bad timing? I don't think that's the case at all. And I think many of us can understand and come to an agreement that that's not the case. I think it's very clear that they didn't want this case being covered completely on the defense side. And we can see this, and we can even really kind of back this up by going back, because later on in this Fox article, it kind of helps us out to show the past times where this has been made very clear that long before this trial had even began, Kyle Rittenhouse was villainized by the liberal media, and particularly on MSNBC, and that's what Fox News wants us to see. I think all kinds of people at CNN and other mainstream media outlets, they have absolutely villainized him and kind of shown that this man was, Kyle Rittenhouse, he was someone that just went around shooting people, and that's not the case. But At MSNBC, and this is going back to that Fox News article, they kind of point out a few times where MSNBC referred to Kyle as a school shooter, the enemy, and they also used the terminology that arguably a domestic terrorist who crossed state lines with the intent to shoot people. Now, that's just not true. And Morning Joe co-host Joe Scarborough claimed that Rittenhouse was just running around shooting and killing protesters. Now, I would probably give more of a pass. Still wouldn't give it a pass because they know that that's not true, even just by the evidence we had before this trial. But I would give more of a pass to anyone saying these things if all of these things were before the trial. But all of this was as the trial was going on. As this trial was proceeding, we have all kinds of facts laid out for us, even by the prosecution, which I think they did a terrible job. I think the prosecution really helped Kyle's case in many ways, and I think that's very hard to argue against. But with all of this going on, with all of the evidence being laid out and very clear to us now, we still just don't care about the facts. We still don't care about what's truly going on. We want to give our own false opinions that are clearly false and have been proven to be false by this trial. After this trial has already been going on, we decide we're going to make these statements. Statements about Kyle Rittenhouse being a villain and being a criminal, going across state lines with the intent to kill protesters. That was not his intent. And we know that. There is no evidence that is true. Many of us know the name of Thomas Binger now, the prosecuting attorney in this case, and he'll forever be hated by anyone that understands the facts of this case. He was caught lying several times throughout the case and scolded by the judge a few times, and one of those times being for questioning Kyle Rittenhouse's post-arrest silence. That is a constitutional given right that he does not have to speak. And even if you go back and watch the video that was released of him in the interrogation room, he didn't want to stay silent. He just said yes, he didn't understand how the entire process worked. He thought he could say, yeah, I want a lawyer, but can I talk first? And that was his attitude towards it. He wanted to talk. But not only that, but you can't criticize the kid and question him for staying silent in the post-arrest interviews. You can't do that. And the judge did scold him for this in particular, but he had scolded him a few other times for things similar to this. But Binger is now going to be associated with one of many who are characterizing these rioters who burned down a city and attempted to kill an innocent 17-year-old as heroes. They're trying to say that all of these protesters are heroes. Real quick, let me play you this clip. It's about a minute long of Binger, the prosecuting attorney, making his statements that these protesters, which we all know are not just protesters, they are rioters, he's trying to paint them out to be heroes, and he makes that very clear. Let's go ahead and give it a listen.
Situation is the crowd have perfect knowledge. When they're told that person running up the street just shot someone, we don't have time in the moment to go back and take a look at the body and replay the video and make a decision before going after the person with the gun. You know, we've had several police officers testify that in an active shooter situation, their first instinct, their first training is to go in and stop the threat. They don't sit there and wonder, well, maybe it was self-defense. I don't know. I'm going to, wait and see. And every day we read about heroes that stop active shooters. That's what was going on here. And that crowd was right. And that crowd was full of heroes. That crowd did something that, honestly, I'm not sure I would have had the courage to do. If I see a guy running up the street with an AR-15 and I hear he just shot somebody, situation is the crowd have perfect knowledge.
All right, so here Binger makes it very clear. He says that these protesters, in his words, these rioters, these people who were burning down buildings, and many of them criminals before this, which we know by the men that were shot by Rittenhouse, they are trying to paint these people out as heroes. They were criminals. They were criminals even before coming to these riots, and they were criminals that night of these riots. And he's wanting to paint them out to be heroes. Criminals. That's who the left wants to hold up high. That's who the left wants to paint out as heroes, as criminals. Which, let's not forget about these criminals who we're calling heroes. Let's go back to these men that Rittenhouse did shoot. One of these men in particular. I want to kind of focus in on one of them, which we've talked about here on this show, but they're heroes, right? So the worst of them all, the one that I am not going to mourn for a second, is Joseph Rosenbaum, a serial child rapist who is screaming, "Kill that N-word," at the top of his lungs and threatening Kyle and those with him that if he got the chance, he would kill them and that he wanted to rip their effing throat out. This is what a hero does? Now, what Binger is trying to say is that these men did not know in the moment that Kyle Rittenhouse was defending himself. Therefore, they had the right to chase after him. They had the right to try to take him out. So they were heroes for that. Now, that is not part of the argument, and that is not a part that is really irrelevant, because when we are talking about this case, it is whether Kyle Rittenhouse instigated or provoked these men to attack him by first engaging in some sort of intent, showing some sort of intent that he wanted to kill protesters. There was zero evidence given for that. Zero. The only evidence given is that these men chased after Kyle Rittenhouse. Kyle Rittenhouse tried to get away from them and did not shoot them until they were physically trying to harm him and physically trying to take his life. This kid was absolutely acting in self-defense. And I encourage you to go check out the link to the Western Journal article that I got much of this information from, and scroll down and look at these videos showing flashbacks of the heroes that are burning down Kenosha in August of 2020. Take a look at these heroes that they're painting and tell me if that looks like something a hero would be doing to his own city. These men were not heroes. They were criminals. They were rioters. They tried to kill a 17-year-old kid who was forced to defend himself and protect his own life. A kid that went there only wanting to do good, but instead was having to protect his own life because these criminals, and one in particular, a child rapist, was trying to kill him. Now going on to this idea of natural immunity, many of us have kind of had this debate about whether natural immunity is better than vaccines, and we've been kind of having this debate for about a year now, maybe over a year now. And COVID has been the cause of many debates over the past year or so. And the CDC is now admitting that they have zero records of people being infected, recovering, and then being sick again with this virus. Zero evidence. They have no evidence, and they have admitted this now. A video made at the Epoch Times by Roman Balmakov shows the evidence with all the sources linked below the video. And I'll have this link in the description so you can go and check out this video. I don't feel a huge need to cover all of the info in this video because he states it all so much better than I could. He really gives such a good backup to his argument. The video covers that it also covers that in Pennsylvania, the Department of Health has, over the past year, been refusing to share the vital information with the state legislature. Specifically, they've been refusing to provide complete information about how they count and report COVID-19 related deaths. So now all of this evidence is coming out, and many of us on the right are trying to hold back, but many of us probably aren't at all. We're really, you know what, let's not beat around the bush. We are not holding back at all. We told you so. When we were trying to state that all of this seemed fishy, all of this seemed that it was kind of nonsense, when all of us tried to say, why do we need a vaccine if we've already been infected? When many of us have been infected and said, I don't see the need for a vaccine because I have natural immunity now. That was the idea, was this herd immunity. We were trying to reach herd immunity. This is why we were trying to take all of these extra precautions and everything. without shutting down the economy. We wanted natural immunity over the vaccines, but you told us we were wrong. You told us that the science would prove that the vaccines would be better. When now we see that the science proves that there are 0 recorded that have been infected with COVID-19, recovered from it, and been infected again. 0 evidence. And the CDC has to completely tell the truth about this, and honestly, they have to be open about it because they have 0 evidence. They have 0 evidence backing up that the vaccine is more effective than natural immunity. So if this is the case, then why are we still pressing for vaccine mandates? Especially for those who are trying to argue that they've been naturally immunized. They have this natural immunity, so why would they have to get a vaccine? If by science and by statistics, we can see that truly this natural immunity is better. This natural immunity is far more effective because 0 have gotten the virus again, where we've had plenty of cases where people have had the vaccine and still gotten COVID. Now moving on, the FDA is asking the court for 55 years to fully release the Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine data. Now this kind of seems just completely ridiculous. They're trying to hold off for 55 years to fully release this data. They don't want to release the true facts about their vaccine, this vaccine that is going to protect everyone, yet it's not protecting enough to really cause those who are vaccinated to not worry about others who aren't vaccinated, and it's also not going to protect enough to where we don't have to wear masks anymore. So ultimately, they're wanting to hold off for 55 years to fully release this data. They don't want us to have the data showing that their vaccine doesn't work as well as they anticipated or as well as they may have advertised. I think this is just absolutely ridiculous that this is even coming out. They want it 55 years. Now, I could understand maybe 5 years. Even then, I might comment on it. 10 years, I would definitely be commenting on it. 15 years, okay, you're starting to press the line. Why do you need to wait this long? I think we could probably see within 5 years. I think we could see some long-term, some long-term data kind of backing up this vaccine, or maybe going against the vaccine, whatever they're trying to do here. But 55 years. Now, if that doesn't seem a little too long to you to hold off providing data for, then I don't know. I mean, you want to hold off for 55 years, but you're so urgent on me getting a vaccine that I know nothing about. Does that not seem a little sketchy to you? Does that not seem like something is kind of murky in the water? Why are you wanting to hold off for 55 years but require me to go get this vaccine that I know nothing about yet because you won't release the data for it? I think that's something that we kind of need to look at and kind of have our eyes open to, because that does seem a little strange. Again, all sources will be at politicallyinsane.us. Just click on the sources tab, go there, and I will have all these sources, all the links to these sources there in those descriptions. Now kind of going on to law firms. We have so many law firms in this country, but it's kind of nerve-wracking when we see where these law firms are leaning. And, I would find this a little alarming for either direction, really, but as someone who is on the right, as a conservative, I find this very alarming to me and my kind of white supremacist, right-leaning conservatives. But there's an article that shows that the political contributions for the top 140 law firms in America, and the statistics are, they're just a bit alarming. So it says here in this article that many firms had fewer than 10% of contributions go to Republican outlets. A handful had at least 25%, and just 3 crossed the 50% mark. Even among those figures are depicted at White and Case, for instance, there was a single $500,000 contribution to the Trump Victory Fund, more than half of all Republican contributions in his 4-year time period. So you may be thinking, why does this even matter? Why is this alarming to you? Well, as someone on the right, this is alarming because if I need a lawyer, they may not give me the full attention needed in a case if my case is something that they don't see me truly innocent in. So if they don't find me truly innocent because they have different standards, they have different morals, they have a different viewpoint than I do, then they may not really be trying to fight as hard as someone who may share similar values with me. If they are so hard-leaning the opposite direction, it may be very difficult for me to even find a good attorney. So with all of these top 140 law firms, that means the top 140, the most successful law firms, the law firms that most people would want to be fighting for them because they have made it into the top 140 across the nation. Across these 140, only 3 were shown to give about a 50% of their contributions towards Republican. Only 3 out of that 140. The rest of them, it was only 25%. Only a handful of them gave at least 25%, so only a quarter. And even fewer than that, only 10% was going towards Republicans. And if you see this, they even have a graph here that you can go and look at. Again, this source will all be at politicallyinsane.us. Just click on sources there. But you see this, and you can see just the vast majority of all of their contributions and how many of them are just leaning so hard towards the democratic view. That is a bit alarming. And even if I'm a Democrat and I see this the other way, let's say that I'm a Democrat and the top 140 law firms in America are leaning towards Republican, I'm going to be a little concerned that, man, the best law firms in this country seem to be leaning the opposite direction that I am. They seem to disagree with me. So if I need one of those law firms to protect me in the court of law, they may not agree with me. I may have a hard time finding a good attorney that agrees with me because all of these big law firms, they seem to disagree with me. That is a bit alarming. So either way, I really would hope that this would kind of be pretty close to even split. Not the top 140 law firms all leaning so far left. I would hope that we could see a little bit of a split there. This does matter. I think this is kind of nerve-wracking. Just for the Rittenhouse trial, for example, we've been talking a lot about that. If the lawyer that was backing up the defense, if he was on Rittenhouse's team of trying to defend him in self-defense, but he didn't truly believe that this was self-defense. Maybe he's someone that's on the left that views this and thinks that he had no right to be there, therefore he had no right to self-defense. If that was the case, if he had such opposing views, wouldn't that be hard for Rittenhouse and his defense team to really come back and try to combat the prosecution's arguments? Wouldn't that be hard for him to win a case if even his lawyer really doesn't truly agree that he's innocent? I think that would be incredibly difficult. I think that's something that we would have to see as being difficult. You know, I think if you have a hard time finding a lawyer that would agree with you, how is he going to be able to fight for your side? Because I can't fight for something that I don't agree with. I can play devil's advocate, but I can't do a very good job of it if I don't put myself in the shoes of agreeing with that side. I think this is alarming that so many of these law firms, and this is only the top 140, so many of these law firms are leaning left. That should be a little alarming for us at least to recognize this. And also just a simple fact that so much of our country is starting to lean so far left, and that's ultimately what we need to be fighting against. We need to be fighting against all of these crazy ideologies that are being pressed on society, being pressed on our schools, where our children are being taught all of these crazy ideas. There should be so many of these things that we are attacking so that our nation is not leaning so far left. We need to be attacking all of these crazy ideas that are being pressed into our society so that we are not alone. We need to try so hard to make sure that we are not alone in all of this, and we all need to stand up. It takes all of us. Even if we're able to only do a little bit at a time, if we're all fighting just a little bit, we'll be able to kind of change this country and what it's really turning out to be. This is all for today. So if you like this episode, please share the podcast on social media or with your friends to help us grow. Also, to help us out greatly, give us a 5-star review in Apple Podcasts. Remember, you can find and follow us on all of your favorite podcast platforms, as well as Facebook, Twitter, and our website, www.politicallyinsane.us. Thank you for listening, and God bless.